It's the Fantasy Commissioner Show.
Hey, it's the Fantasy Commissioner Show. The show for commissioners by a commissioner. I am Reginald James, the commish. Come join me here on the live feed at rabble.tv. You can also hit me up on Twitter at commishshow. Send me an email at thecommisshow@outlook.com. Whoa, 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 whoa. Hey, hey, hey. What's going on, people? It's another Friday. Happy Friday. Happy Friday to you all. Week 7. Week 7. Week 7. For all you playoff folks, you're halfway there. The rest of us will play till week 17. Oh my God, he's still playing in week 17. You never played during week 17. No, you don't do that. Yeah, we do. We do. So you're almost there, folks. Week 7. Week 7. Panic time for some of you guys, I guess. Yep. Yeah, panic time. So welcome to another late night edition or evening edition. It's 11 o'clock, East Coast, of the FCS, the Fantasy Commissioner Show. We're here to help. So was I not talking about LeSean McCoy a couple of weeks ago? Was it last week? Was it last week or was it the week before? See? Now, kudos to you folks who were brave enough, and I will say that, to get him. But it's happening again. And you can't have amnesia when you play fantasy football. You can't. Or fantasy sports in general, but this is all about football, baby. You can't. This happens every year. Now, I can shoot out from 5, 6 different 10, 20,000 big league directions, you know, off of just LeSean McCoy. I'll try not to, but why not? I can do whatever I want. It's my show, so maybe I will. But first, I believe I was talking about LeSean McCoy and some other players, but LeSean McCoy is my favorite example because everyone loves themselves some LeSean McCoy. Shady McCoy. Well, I like him too as an NFL player. But as a fantasy player, he is kryptonite to my Superman. I'm not touching him. I'm not going anywhere near him. He is on my do not draft list every year. He's been like that for quite a while. You're crazy. That's what you say. Yep. Yep. But do you have him? We can make this a topic about handcuffs. Mike Gillisley. We can talk about why players don't get to vote on trades because someone like me doesn't hold LeSean McCoy in such high esteem as others, and that's why players don't vote on trades. That's up to the commissioner. We can go off in that direction. I mean, LeSean McCoy is providing us with fertile ground. I wish to discuss many a thing fantasy-wise. But let's just keep it loose for a second. This always happens, though. Now, if you had him, man, you have. I mean, I guess it all depends about what the rest of your roster looks like. But from this one player alone, he's delivered. And like I said, I'm down with him as an NFL player, but fantasy, no. So it's finally happened. And hamstrings, they don't go away. So fantasy tip of the day. That was early. An early fantasy tip of the day. Trade him. I should keep like an index. It's too late now. I've done over 38 episodes or something like that. But I'm not going back now. But I should keep a database of all my shows and like kind of like have an outline of the things that I talk about. Because this is kind of like a reoccurring theme. I talked about this like I said, I think it was about last week. But it's come up many a time about players who I won't draft, and I'll get, feedback like, "What are you talking about? Yeah, you're a fantasy expert." Yeah, blah, blah. I have never called myself fantasy expert. Did you get that? I've never called myself a fantasy expert. I'll leave that up to others. But what I will say is that each to its own. I'm not having to worry about what to do about LaShawn McCoy. And in fact, if I was actually all crazy about Shady McCoy, I would have had Mike Gillislee on my bench anyway. Because if I was going to take that leap, I would have had to have occupied yet another bench spot with Mike Gillislee. And I am not adverse to handcuffs. I believe in handcuffs, and I believe your handcuffs should be on your bench. So when you're going into the draft, you have to decide, okay, I'm going to draft this running back, and his backup is a legit handcuff, because not every backup is a legit handcuff. And if their backup is a legit handcuff, then now you basically have 2 roster spots for one player, and that's okay. Some people, different philosophy. They're like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to have players on my team that I can actually start. Well, that's fine, and that does, I've done both, and it works out sometimes. But are you one of those people every week? Okay, who do I start? Do I start Ricky or Tommy or Billy? Because now you have all these players who are kind of like interchangeable. I don't like that. I like to have strong players, so there's no question from week to week who I'm going to start, generally. So I'll have, for example, I have David Johnson. I had Chris Johnson as the backup. I know Chris Johnson would replace him, but after Chris Johnson got hurt, I have no handcuff for David Johnson because I know that it will. I believe that it will be a running back by committee of sorts, with Arrington mixing it in with I forget who it is actually at this point, but. If I don't have I have Todd Gurley and I don't have Benny Cunningham. We know who Benny Cunningham is. And Gurley is having a hard time this year because they're daring Case Keenum to throw, and it kind of worked out for him last week. And Case Keenum, he's in a groove. He's throwing the little short passes, and it's kind of working out. But just imagine the hard time that Gurley is having. Just imagine what kind of work Benny Cunningham would do just to get 1 yard. I don't want a piece of that. So you're welcome to have him. Someone had Alfred Morris, and they dropped him. I picked him up. No, I don't have Ezekiel Elliott, but I do know if Ezekiel Elliott gets hurt, I got an RB1. Boom. Different philosophy. So, LaShawn McCoy, came up because I addressed a question about a commissioner who, wow, good for him. He gets a lot of credit. He gets a lot of credit for letting this trade go through. He let a trade go through even though he thought it was crap. And I know this guy. I mean, I don't know him personally, but I've seen his questions before. He always always is like, oh, but by the way, what he did do, he made the two the two owners explain why they made the trade, and I would have said, go screw yourself, basically, is what I would have said. I don't have to explain myself to you, which is what I said in my answer. And that was about 2 weeks ago. The 2 weeks ago show. And my answer was, they don't owe you an explanation at all. As long as you have determined that it's not collusion, then the trade goes through. No one votes on it in the league. The trade goes through, and that's it. Doesn't matter whether you think it's crap or not. And that's why we'll move to the idea of perceived value once more. Because this guy, Stephon Diggs, was involved in this trade, and the commissioner was like, well, I think Stephon Diggs is great. I don't know why he's trading him. I think it's a crap trade. And I talked about this on last week when I was a guest on Fantasy Sports Today on the Fantasy Sports Network. And I talked about that. The question Ashley asked about the most common questions that I get, and or issues that I come across. And one of the biggest issues is commissioners who just try to overcommish, who feel that they have to put their hands in every single little situation, and they have to comment, or in this case, make two people explain why they did a perfectly legit trade. And he thought the trade was crap because, he didn't know why the guy wanted to trade Stephon Diggs. Well, So, once again, LaShawn McCoy, the perceived value from player to player changes from owner to owner. So, whereas LaShawn McCoy was on my do not draft list, obviously someone drafted him. But because I know that LaShawn McCoy gets hurt, and it's funny, the timing was perfect. One of my best friends is in a league, not our league, but he's in another league. And he has LaShawn McCoy. He has Jordy Nelson. He has Julio Jones. He has all these guys who... I mean, look, Julio Jones has foot issues, and he plays injured. But foot injuries, and I'm not gonna have an anatomy lesson about the number of bones in the foot and the muscles and all that. But once your foot gets injured, that's it's not like breaking your leg or breaking your arm. You break your humerus, they said it, you heal. That's one bone. But in your foot, you have all these little tiny bones, and they don't always heal correctly ever again. It's hard. And anyways, so the point is, he's got like the injured squad. So far so good, Julio, he's sticking through. And I warned him. I was like, he wanted to know what my opinion was of his draft, and I was like, dude, trade those guys. Like I know you're going to have good games with these guys, and every week you have good games with these guys, you're going to want to hold on tighter, and you're not going to want to trade them. But sooner or later, you're going to get burnt, and you're going to be stuck, because then you won't be able to trade those players. It takes different kinds of people. You have people who are willing to take the risk, willing to ride out those points, to get those points. And they cross their fingers. Well, I don't like crossing fingers. I'm not going to, because I'll be a nervous wreck. So anyways, that was one of our earlier discussions. It's one of the topics that I mentioned earlier in this season. And I'm pretty sure during the preseason I brought that up. So I get to watch all the games, and so I'm watching. I always have to say that, so people understand where I'm coming from, what my background is, because I'm not just looking at stat sheets. I'm eyeballing the games. I see the games. So I could care less about the red zone. I think the red zone is junk. I personally don't want it. I think it's good for like kids or something. I think it's good for actually I don't think it's good for kids. I think kids should actually watch the football game itself and learn the game. I'm not really sure what place the red zone has. I don't, I don't. But so I mention that from time to time because I need for people to know that when I'm talking about what happened in a certain game, it's because I've seen it. If I didn't see it, I'm not going to say I saw it. So I'm watching the game last week, and LaShaman went down, and LaShawn McCoy went down as well. LaShawn McCoy went down. I was like, oh, there it is. It's finally happened. So he went out for a while. And Gillislee has been getting some reps all along anyway. He's not like one of those backups who's just been sitting around on the bench watching. Now, Gillislee is not a world beater, but what he is a running back in an offense that highlights the running back. You can't say the same for every team, but with the Buffalo Bills, it's going through that pass-catching running back. Gillislee can perform in that role. And I had on the way, and I always call my best friend in the morning. We talk football, and then after the 4:00 games, I talk to my cousin and we talk football. So we'll discuss the games and that sort of thing. So pre-game, the topic of Odell Beckham came up, and I'm not going to discuss him because I'll just have this big, agitated, fiery rant for the next 44 minutes, and I'm not a fan of his, and I'll just leave it at that. So he brought up Odell Beckham because this was before, he had his 200-yard game and all that, and so, he reminded me about what I said about Beckham and everything, and so we talked about that, and I'll leave it at that. And then, he's like, "Hey, man, so so far so good," and I'm like, "Yep, trade those guys, trade Jordy Nelson, trade LaShawn McCoy." And so anyway, so LaShawn McCoy's lying there on the field. I was like, "Guys, finally happened," and so fast forward to this week. And I'm like, now it's about time to get Mike Gillislee. Now it's about time. I love running backs like David Johnson because they're big and they're strong and they can take hits. Smaller backs, it wears on them. It's hard for a running back like LaShawn McCoy, especially now he's older. But it's hard for a small back to be the focal point and just take those hits. Bam. Bam, like play after play. It's hard. It wears on them. I tried to avoid small backs like that in fantasy. I totally avoid small receivers like Tavon Austin, Mr. Gimmick guy, who the Rams stupidly paid 2 contracts. Number one receiver money when he's not a number one receiver. And now, official tangent number 1. And so now, it's just horrible to watch because now they're putting him in the backfield and they're trying to force feed him all these college grade plays because they spent the money on him. They gotta get their money's worth, and they're trying to get him all these plays just to validate what they did. Obviously, they don't think what they did was dumb, but I'm telling you, it's dumb. You keep trying to run little Tavon Austin out of the backfield, and he'll be out in a couple of weeks. Anyways, so fast forward to waivers, and I'm like, now I just saw LaShawn. I don't know. I can't say LaShawn McCoy's name today. Drat. 11 p.m. shows. I curse you. So I'm like, oh. So I went and he should not have been there, but Gillislee was there on the waiver wire. Oh, so I picked him up. And if you're listening to this show, you follow fantasy and you follow the NFL or one or the other. But the point is, you should know what's going on right now, right? LaShawn McCoy might not start. I got Gillislee, baby. I got an RB1. Now, some people might debate me with that, but it's the system. He fits the system. He's an RB1 in the Bills system. I got him. And it's all because of my perceived value of LaShawn McCoy. I didn't pick Gillislee up after it was announced that he hurt himself in practice, which no, he didn't. No, he didn't. He hurt himself in the game. He hurt himself in the game. And he went out. Gillislee got his reps. And I think he aggravated the injury in practice. I don't think he injured himself in practice. So that's the benefit I got for actually being able to see all the games that I do. But the point is, he shouldn't have been there. He should not have been on the waiver wire. Just shouldn't have been on the waiver wire at all. And so perceived value. See, I told you, LaShawn McCoy is providing fertile ground for the show today. Handcuffs, perceived value, voting on trades. It all spawns from LaShawn McCoy. LaShawn McCoy is the sire. Vampire shit, right? Oops, family show. So because of my personal perceived value of LaShawn McCoy, it disallowed me from drafting him in the first place. But because I view him in the way that I do, I'm like a vulture just waiting for the opportunity. And I had to make roster moves to do it, so I wasn't going to have Gillislee sit on my bench for forever. Now, on Alfred Morris, yes, because the line, the Dallas offensive line is so much better, and I trust the Dallas offense better than Buffalo. So that's the only reason I didn't have Gillislee on my bench all season. If I had greater faith in the Buffalo offense, compared to, say, once again the Cowboys, I might have not drafted Gillislee, but I would have stashed him. So anyways, so there's that perceived value topic again. I'm going to keep him. And so I got Gillislee, and I held on to him, and it was the strangest thing. The next day, I don't know what day was it. When did it come out? Wednesday. LaShawn McCoy injured himself. I was like, what? Yes. I don't wish anyone ill, but from a gaming perspective, that helps me out, right? And this isn't going to go away. This is a game, and when you play for money, you have to pay attention to so many things as opposed to just watching the games and putting players in. It's so much bigger. Now, if you're just having fun and you're playing with family and friends, then no, you don't need to. Well, I'm competitive, so I would do that if I would do that with family and friends as well. But I mean, the point is, the opportunity is there for you to get the information and pay attention. I'll talk about that in a second too. So anyways, I'm going to leave the LaShawn McCoy train. But once again, what do we learn in class? The value of handcuffs. Not every backup player is a handcuff. You have to pay attention to who the actual backup is and what kind of system they are in. Sometimes when the number one running back goes down, the offense will not totally, but they will change the way they run the offense because of the player they lost. Other times, depending on the system, they will just keep doing right what they've been doing the weeks before. because that player that comes in is a great complement to the player that went down. Perceived value. Players who avoided drafting LaShawn McCoy altogether, like myself, because they didn't know when he was going to go down. It was just a matter. They knew when he would. It wasn't if he was going down. It was a matter of when he was going down. He could have went down in week 2 or week 4, but I know he's going down because he does it every year. And no, not every player gets hurt. And some players play through, their injuries, but not every player gets hurt. Because, I've had that discussion before. Well, football players get hurt all the time. Yeah, that's true. People get hurt every week. But some of the same players routinely get hurt like they're a marigold coming out of the, blooming every spring. Foster, whose first name I can't think of for whatever reason. Arian Foster, LaShawn McCoy. It's an annual event, guys, and you can't ignore that. And briefly voting on trades, same thing. Because of someone's perceived value, league members don't vote on trades. Number 1. 2, commissioners shouldn't veto trades because, once again, going back to that perceived value, they perceive the value differently than someone else of a player. Nope. So it didn't work out. The fantastic matchup, the fantastic fantasy matchup that I had, or that the Chiefs had with the Raiders. So here's the update. So last week I pulled all my Chargers because they were playing the Broncos. So I pulled Phillip Rivers, Tyrell Williams, and Hunter Henry. So if you're listening to this, you're like, why is he talking about this? I don't want to hear about his fantasy team. Yep, oh well. I brought this up last week because sometimes I just think it's here. I personally like to hear people's strategies as well. Some of the reasons why they decide to do what they do, why they draft the people they draft. I might not even agree with what they're doing, but I like to learn new things and I like to be exposed to different perspectives. So that's the difference between, folks like me and other people. So every once in a while I will share what's going on in my league, and just because it's an example, and it might help people make good decisions or avoid decisions. It might, what I did could be an example of what to do or what not to do. It just depends on your perspective. So I talked about my strategy last week, and so now I'm giving the update. So I pulled those players because of the matchup with the Broncos. And it actually turned out to be a good move in one sense because, on paper, Alex Smith was, it was a great matchup on paper. Starting Alex Smith against the Raiders. So I stacked Chris Conley with him, but only after I saw that the game that I was down so far in points. I actually had Quincy Enunwa in the starting wide receiver position, but I pulled him because I was down so far. The guy I was playing, man, he had the perfect roster last week, and I'm like, well, I know Alex is supposed, because look, on the Chiefs offense, it's going through the running backs. Number 1. If Charles is in, and that's another player, perceived value, that's a do not draft guy for me. Do not draft guy. And I was going to draft Spencer Ware, but someone in my league drafted Spencer Ware in the 2nd round. I was like, what? That was way early. But it's turned out to be all right for that guy. He's not doing well overall, but it turned out to be all right. I mean, he wanted Ware, and he went and got him, which I think that's what you should do. I know they always have all these rankings and the ECR and all this stuff, but this is another topic for another day. But you get who you want, and don't sit there and go, well, I really want Spencer Ware, but he's projected to go in the 5th round or the 6th round, so I'll wait. No, you get the player you want. That's what a guy did in my league. He got Ware. So anyway, so with the Chiefs, especially when they do things a little differently with when Ware is in. Ware, they're just gonna bang him. With God, I just oh man, my mind just totally went blank. Charles, okay, Charles, Charles, I'm having a hard time. I'm having a hard time this evening. Can't remember players' names. Charles, whatever, Jamal Charles. There we go. Yay, he did it. God. So Jamal Charles, when Jamal Charles is in, you know, he's a different type of back. So, you know, they pass to him a lot. The offense runs a little bit differently, right? So, but the point is, it still goes through the backs. It goes through Charles or it goes through Ware. It doesn't matter. And then the next hand that gets the ball is Macklin, and then Kelsey. Conley is, you know, down. You know, he's after those guys. So I know he's not going to be the one to be the focus most of the time. But I was down so far, so I'm like, all right, I got to play him. So yeah, I wanted to take advantage of the alleged big day Alex Smith was going to have. Oh yeah, Alex Smith is going to do this. Fantasy Pros, not Fantasy Pros, FanDuel and Fantasy Aces. Oh yeah, DraftKings. Oh, Alex Smith. Blah 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 blah. I went that way from a seasonal league, but man, DFS, I was all over Roethlisberger, and that didn't turn out so well. So like I said, I can see all the games, right? Now, if you don't, here's where the playbooks come in handy. So if you go to NFL.com, you can pull up the whole game like a script, play by play, down and distance, who ran the ball, who tackled him, penalties, all of it. Now, you have that at your disposal. You don't have to pay a membership to all these different fantasy sites and these, fantasy analytical sites. You don't have to do that. This is free. You can get the playbook. And why is this important? It's important. So look, Alex Smith didn't help me or anyone who tried to take advantage of the matchup. But here's what you didn't see, which drove me nuts because I'm watching the game. He had 3 opportunities to score from inside the 10. He was right there. I was like, come on, pass the ball. And you know how you have a quarterback and he hands the ball off to his running back teammate. And you're like, no. Yeah. They tackle him on the one. You're like, yes. Because he gets tackled. So you're like, please pass the ball. So that's what I'm doing, right? I'm like, pass the ball. So he had 3 opportunities to score and they ran the ball. And the weather wasn't good. It was rainy. So, logically, you're going to be smart, because the ball gets heavy. For those of you who don't know, it's leather and it's not waterproof. The ball now they exchange. It's different. They do rotate balls. So maybe the ball isn't going to be as heavy as it could be if they're playing with the same ball the whole game. Let's make sure I address that. Okay. So, but if you have a good running game and the turf is wet or is raining, you're gonna go there. You're gonna run and you're gonna bang it out. That's just kind of what they do traditionally. People can always change things, but that's usually what's gonna happen. That's what the Chiefs did. Okay, so that's what they did. Now, he did throw a ball that scored. It was to their defensive tackle or something. Can't remember his name, Mula or whatever. But it was considered a lateral, which is, which equates into a run. Like, yes! Well, they say that it's going to be considered a lateral, so it's not a touchdown pass, but it's still a score for the Chiefs. I'm like, oh. So why am I bringing up the NFL playbook? Because before you go sour on a player who you think didn't perform like you wanted or expected, take a look. Go to NFL.com and take a look at the playbook. And you're not going to see that watching the red zone. You're not going to get that information from the red zone. Because your player may have scored, but the play was nullified and was called back due to a penalty, right? You won't know that if you didn't watch the game. You might think your player never got a shot. You know, like, man, they're not throwing to him, and they're not. You don't know that if you didn't see the game. But play by play, it's all right there. It's a script, man. It's like, down, and you can read it. And he'll say penalty in all caps, like you can't miss it. He'll say penalty, all caps, like they're yelling at you. And you'll see, like, and I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I'm trying to remember. But I believe, Cameron Meredith. I'm not doing late shows anymore. I can't even talk. I'm gonna take my toys and go home. Cameron Meredith, everyone's darling, but maybe not anymore. That's a whole other fantasy topic altogether, but not today. Okay. But the week that he broke out, he had what? I don't even know. What was it? 131, 181, and a touchdown. He actually scored another one, and it got called back. But still, his performance on paper was enough for people to go crazy, and go crazy on the waiver wire after him, right? But, and then, anyways, the point is, it happens all the time. Eric Ebron, like 2 weeks ago, I believe, got a touchdown, was dancing and everything, and I don't know what happened. Who knows, and it got called back. So, Ebron gets dumped on the waiver wire, right? So, if you don't have the ability to watch all the games, you have a fantasy roster, so you need to know what your players are doing. So once again, before you go sour on them and go, man, look at this score, he ain't doing nothing, you need to make sure that he's really not doing anything. You need to make sure that they actually didn't score and then it got called back for a penalty. You have to, well, that's the biggest one right there. It happens all the time. Okay, so anyways, so here are the starters that I pulled. I pulled Rivers. He got 11.93. We used fractional scoring. Tyrell Williams scored 2.62. Hunter Henry scored 13 points, right? So I pulled them. And as I was mentioning last week, I am a believer in you start your studs and there are matchup proof players, blah, 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 blah. I'm one of those guys. I don't feel that those three players are those guys. So, yeah, it was a matchup against Denver, and it worked out kind of like the way I thought. So, yeah, I was right. But here's the deal. So, in their place, yes, I started the aforementioned Alex Smith. He got 7.4 points. What? Compared to Rivers' 12. We'll just round. We're rounding his score. 11.93, that's 12, okay? So CJ Federich, whatever. What is his name? Federich? I don't know. He scored 13.17 to Hunter's 13. That's a wash. And Chris Conley got 2.48 points compared to Tyrell Williams' 2.62. So Chargers, they got me 28 points. It was 27.58, 28 points. So the Chargers, my three players got 28 points between the three of them. That's terrible. Those are my weekly starters, so I pulled them. Versus 23.05 or 23 points. So it was 28 points for my starters, my weekly starters that I pulled, versus 23 points for the people I plugged into their place. 5-point differential. So it didn't really benefit me, the fantasy matchup, but it was supposed to, and that's the whole point. It could have worked out. Alex Smith was in the position to score. There were no long runs by Ware or Charles. He was right there staring at the goal line. So it was possible that he could have had 3 touchdown passes. It doesn't work out sometimes in the real world. We get that, and it's on, what's on paper, like this weekend. He's supposed to have another juicy one. Kansas City's, they're playing, I believe, the Saints. I believe they're playing the Saints this weekend. That's supposed to be another one. But you have to know the system. You have to know what they do as an offense. Now, I'll just say Alex was the one guy that was available with the options that I had. That was the one that was best for me. But if I had another option, what I consider to be a better option with a higher upside, I would have chosen them over Smith. Because it doesn't matter that the Raiders have the worst defense in the league, and they do. Their style of play doesn't benefit me, but that was the choice that I felt I had to make. And so it didn't really benefit me, the fantasy matchup, that is, right? They're dirt. The Raiders are dirt. They're last, like out of 32. And they don't have a pass defense. Now, Smith threw for 224, but when, a player doesn't throw touchdowns, you got a problem, right? And it was all for naught anyway, because the dude I was playing, he had Cam Newton, he had Christian Michael, Brandon Cooks, Rob Gronkowski, Randall Cobb, and Josh Lambo. All of those guys had bank days. So the score was 143 to my 107. It wasn't even close. So, I mean, I've got my studs too, but they didn't put up the numbers. So I didn't have a good support staff, and I usually do every week. But I didn't have a good support staff this weekend, or this past weekend, to support the 23 points from from a quarterback, tight end, and a receiver. That stinks. It was stinky with the 28 from the Chargers, and it was stinky with the 23 from the three players, Fedoritz and Alex Smith and Chris Conley. It was horrible. So normally my running backs would support that, but they didn't. And 143 points, because I've got David Johnson, I've got DeMarco Murray, and I've got Todd Gurley. So I said I was going to tell you guys what happened, and I'm going to do it again next week because they play Denver again. But next week I am going to play Hunter Henry, though. But I'm going to pull Rivers, and I'm going to pull Tyrell again. So just sharing of the strategy. Even if Smith had a good day, I still would have lost, right? I mean, 147 to 107, 143 to 107. But every week this season, the combined score of my backs, they've carried me. They have outscored basically other people's combined rosters alone. Boom. Every week. Every week. So last week, I was on the Fantasy Sports Network on their afternoon show, Fantasy Sports Today with Chris and Ashley. And someone wanted to know, not on the show, but someone saw the episode and they were like, what do you mean by being transparent? And that simply means, okay, well, first let me say, I have 5 rules. I have 5 rules that I talk about every season. This is my second season doing the FCS, the Fantasy Commissioner Show. I am Reginald James, the commish. 5 rules for a happy league. The first one is put it in writing. 2 is business before family and friends. 3 is be transparent. That's what someone wanted me to explain to them. So I answered the question, but I will answer it here as well. And the next is number 4 is don't make it personal. And number 5 is don't commish just to commish, a.k.a. don't over commish. So being transparent, it just basically means pretend that you live in a glass house. Everyone gets to see what you are doing as a commissioner. If you, for example, I could start somewhere else, but this just popped into my head. If, for example, you want to remind if for example you have a player in your league who seemingly forgets to put players to start a player, I call it a donut hole. So especially right now, okay. So say who has a bye week? Carolina has a bye week. So say they have Devin Funches, and they're sitting in that wide receiver slot right now, and then comes Sunday when the roster is locked, Devin Funches is still there, and you notice that this person does this a couple of times. You do have an option. Here are your options as a commissioner. You can contact that person specifically and say, hey, man, and I guess this, and not I guess, but this all depends on your relationship with the person, how long you've known the person, whether this is an office league or their family or friends or whatever. But so that's the first criteria that you need to consider. But I would suggest generally, so say it's Robbie, and Robbie, oh man, I'm sorry, man. I had to go to church and I forgot to, we had to leave the house and okay. Well, sure, you can talk to him personally and say, hey man, look, you gotta. I don't even know if this is a good example or not. Because that's kind of meddling, but. Okay. You don't want people to leave donut holes. It's not fair for one person to be being a jag-off, and then all of a sudden they start playing better, so they're giving people their best when they gave other people their worst. I don't like that. I don't think that's fair. So you have the option to say, hey, man, just make sure you don't leave a donut hole. Make sure you start make sure you play your starters. And by the way, rule number one, put it in writing. You can put that in writing and say, hey, it's up to you. It's a suggestion. I'm not saying that you do this. It's just something to think about. In some leagues, some leagues people actually, will dock a player points, dock a player a win. The commissioner will override the roster and put a player in. I'm not saying that's a good one, but I'm just throwing out what some people do. Some commissioners do. You have to have a starting player in your roster, in your starting roster. You can't have someone who is on their bye week. That's just a rule in some leagues. And if you have that rule, make sure it's in writing. Okay, so let's go back to the original part of this. So you can talk to this person personally. Go, hey, man, let's just keep it tight, because I want this league to be competitive, and I want everyone to compete equally. Okay, like, okay, man. Now that person might just go, okay, man, and be cool with it, and they'll do their best. Or they might get pissy, and now you got crap. Because it all depends on the person, on your relationship, and we get that. I know you get that. Or you can send a general letter, and everyone will probably get this because they know. I mean, it depends. Some people are really hands-on in the league. They know who the other players are, and you should know who other players are on people's rosters. And by the way, you should know, especially the people you're going to play the following week. Not today, not week 7, next week 8. Right now, you should know. You should know who your opponent is for week 8, and if they have players that are on bye, and you need to look at their roster to see if they're going to run into issues to put forward a starting roster. Maybe they have 4 or 5 guys who are on bye. It happens. You might be able to use that information strategically against them. And I don't have time to get into that, but I was just reminded of that. I'm reminded of that. So option number 1, you can talk to the person personally, or you send a general message to the whole league, and you CC don't do the blind carbon copy, don't do the BCC, you CC, carbon copy everyone. So everyone sees that you're talking to each member of the league. You can't be accused of favoritism. Well, I didn't get that email. Yeah, you did, and everyone saw that you got the email. Shut up, right? That's not language that I use. Family show. Okay, so I've never had a conversation like that. Honestly. Okay. So, or you can send out that general letter where you just address the issue. hey guys, make sure that you have a starting player on your roster. It is part of the rules. This is one warning. Next time it happens, I'll dock you. Whatever your rules happens to be, just remind them of it. And so the person who transgressed, the prior weekend, they get the message too. So, you have to know who your people are in your league and how they'll take information. Because some people just get pissy for no good reason, and then they're pissy the rest of the season. So you have to handle that accordingly, right? So that's one example of being transparent. You send the message out globally, and so everyone knows that you're addressing the issue. It's not a private conversation between you and someone else. Okay? If something comes up where I need to change, you don't change rules once the season starts. But let's just say, for example, depending on how you have the league set up, there was a change in the scoring. And for some reason, I can't imagine why it would be like that now, but for some reasons, some people manually change everything. And you have to manually change, a score or something, or after the scores have locked in the final score is locked in and there's a scoring change. Some systems, things change automatically. Others, you override it because some people want to be able to control that. Well, you just don't change it. For example, I have Kiko Alonso, and it wasn't that big of a deal, so I don't remember specifically, but it was one of these things. He either got a tackle and they changed it to an assisted tackle, or he got an assisted tackle and it got changed to an actual solo. It's one or the other, because, like I said, 147 to it didn't really make a difference. So I saw the mention and I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. But say, for example, you are a commissioner who has chosen to override a situation like that. Once the scores are locked in, you don't change that until when you change the score, you send a message to the league. You CC everyone. Hey guys, I just changed the score. It was officially converted from an assisted tackle to a solo tackle, and I did that. It affects the following scores or the following teams, blah blah blah. Everyone gets that. You don't, for example, say I'm in that league, the commissioner should not change the score and then just tell me, hey Reginald, you've got Kiko Alonso and his assisted tackle was actually converted to a solo tackle. Usually it's the other way around, but whatever. I'm just letting you know. No. It's fine by me, but you never know. Once again, when someone is going to get pissy, be like, "Hey, Reginald's your favorite." No, so even though it affects just me and maybe the other player I played, just in case, say for example it was a tie or something like that, right? Or now I win by half a point instead of losing by half a point. You still tell everyone what you did and it went and what went down. That's another example of being transparent. All messages goes out to everyone. Everyone's CC'd. Everything you do, it's like keeping a log. It's like a private journal. It's like a public journal. We are in Yahoo, so most of the commissioner. So whenever I do something with the commissioner tools, it actually prints it out near the bottom below the standings. It tells people exactly what I did. I don't know if it mentions my username or my team name, but let's, for argument's sake, my team name is the Boogie Bang. So say the Boogie Bang changed automatic scoring. The Boogie Bang did this, right? It might not be like that for other leagues. So especially in other leagues, if it doesn't, if they don't track what you do as a commissioner, it's your obligation, it's your duty to not, go around doing stuff in the dark. And you might have the best of intentions. Let's just say I'm not, because there are crooked commissioners. We know that, and they make it hard for the rest of us. But let's just say you have the best of intentions. It won't matter if they don't believe you. I'm going to say that again because, new commissioners, listen up. It doesn't matter if you have the best of intentions. If someone doesn't want to believe you, it's done. Well, I didn't think it would matter. I just changed the score. That's what I'm supposed to do. I mean, what are you so upset about? Because they choose to be upset and they choose not to believe you. That's the deal, and there's nothing you can do about it. But if you send the global letter to everyone, hey, I'm doing this, you can't be accused of sneaking around or showing favoritism or doing it in the dark. You're doing all your business, you're doing it in the light of day. So that's really it. I can go on and on about different ow my neck. Like you. Woo. He's going to die. You're going to die. My neck just got really tight for some reason. Because you're tense. You're a tense man, Reginald. So, but I can come up with I can come up with more examples about being transparent, but I hope that helps. I mean, well, anyways, I answered the question anyways. But I'm sharing once again. But that's pretty much it. And I also it's a little thing. It's a little thing, and it's not that big of a deal. But I always, and I even put it in italic. I'm almost done. So my inability to speak the English language will no longer be on display in a couple of minutes. I will be done. I will be done. And no one's listening to this at midnight anyway. I know this. So if someone listens to this, it's totally going to be as an archive. I know that. So, and no one is here in the live feed. That makes me sad. Okay. So, but there are many examples, but that's just, those are a couple, and I actually hope that helps. Like, I'm gonna retire. Like, I can't speak. I love this show. I love doing this, folks. I love helping people, and I hope that when you listen to the show, if you read my Q&As over at fantasypros.com, I answer questions there as well. I hope you get help. I hope I'm able to help you. I hope you learn some things, and I hope you share what you've learned with other people. And if you like what you hear, just let them know, man. Share the wealth. And Week 7 is on deck. I wish everyone the best. Thanks for listening, everyone. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter at @commissshow. Email thecommissshow@outlook.com. This is the Fantasy Commissioner Show. I am Reginald James. Until next time, see ya!